The Great Hall on the planet Prime had never been so quiet. For 3,000 years, this chamber had echoed with the voices of hundreds of alien species. They had debated trade agreements, settled border disputes, and celebrated scientific discoveries. But today, there was only silence and fear. High Counselor Rand stood at the center of the room. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin that glowed softly in the dim light. He had 4 arms, which he used to gesture when he spoke. But now those arms hung limp at his sides. His large silver eyes stared at the holographic display floating before him, and what he saw made his heart sink. The Oran swarm had broken through. "Report," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Fleet Admiral Ara stepped forward. She was covered in green scales, and her yellow eyes were filled with exhaustion. She had not slept in many days. None of them had. "The outer defense line is gone," she said. 12 colony worlds have stopped responding. We believe they have been consumed. The swarm is moving faster than we predicted. At this rate, they will reach the core systems within 60 rotations. A wave of despair moved through the gathered delegates. There were over 400 different species represented in this council. Some were tall, some were short. Some had wings, others had tentacles. They came from every corner of the known galaxy. Together, they had built an alliance that had lasted for. They called themselves the Galactic Conquered, and they believed they were the most advanced civilizations in existence. But they had never faced anything like the Oran. The Oran were not like other enemies. They did not want territory or resources or power. They did not negotiate or make demands. They simply ate. Each creature in the swarm was small, about the size of a human hand, with sharp teeth and an endless hunger. Alone, one was harmless. But they never came alone. They came in waves of billions, trillions, numbers so large that the Council's computers struggled to count them. When they found a world with life, they descended like a storm. They ate everything. Plants, animals, people. When they finished, they moved on to the next world, leaving nothing behind but empty rock. "What about our weapons?" asked Counselor, a small furry creature with large ears. "Surely our combined military power can stop them." Ara shook her head slowly. "We have tried everything. Energy beams, plasma cannons, gravitational weapons. We can kill them, yes, millions at a time. But for every million we destroy, 10 million more take their place. Our fleet has been reduced to 30% strength. We are running out of ships, out of soldiers, out of time." The hall fell silent again. Rand looked around at the faces of his fellow counselors. He saw fear, grief, and something worse. He saw acceptance. They were giving up. "There must be something," he said, more to himself than anyone else. An old voice spoke from the back of the chamber. "There is one option we have not considered." Everyone turned to look. Counselor rose slowly from her seat. She was ancient, even by the standards of her long-lived species. Her skin was wrinkled and gray, her movements slow and careful. But her mind was still sharp, and when she spoke, others listened. "The humans," she said simply. The reaction was immediate. Some delegates laughed. Others shook their heads in disbelief. A few made sounds of disgust. "The humans," Ara repeated. "With respect, Counselor, this is not the time for jokes. The humans are primitive. They have only been traveling between stars for 60 of their years. Their ships are slow, their technology is basic, and they know almost nothing about advanced science." "They still use chemical rockets for some of their vessels," added another delegate. "They are barely out of their caves." Waited for the noise to die down. Then she spoke again, her voice calm and steady. "I have lived a very long time. I have seen species rise and fall. I have watched empires crumble and new ones take their place. And in all my years, I have learned one important lesson. Never judge a species by their technology alone." She paused, letting her words sink in. "The humans are young, yes. They are crude, yes. But there is something about them that troubles me, something I cannot quite explain. They have a darkness in them, a capacity for violence that I have rarely seen. And yet they also have a light, a stubbornness, a refusal to surrender even when all hope is lost. Rand considered her words. What exactly are you suggesting? Send them our message, said. Tell them what is happening, ask for their help. What do we have to lose? If they say no, we are no worse off than before. But if they say yes. She left the sentence unfinished. The council voted. The decision was close, very close. Many delegates thought it was a waste of time. But in the end, desperation won over pride. The message was sent. It traveled across the galaxy at faster-than-light speeds, bouncing through relay stations until it reached a small blue planet called Earth. The message contained everything: data on the Orion, maps showing the swarm's movement, casualty reports, and a simple request for aid. On Earth, it was the middle of the night in Geneva, Switzerland, where the United Nations Space Command had its headquarters. Lieutenant was on duty when the transmission arrived. She was 26 years old, with red hair and freckles, and she had joined the Space Command because she loved the idea of exploring the stars. When she decoded the message, her hands began to shake. She read it once, then twice, then a third time. Then she reached for the emergency phone that connected directly to the Secretary General. Within hours, the leaders of every nation on Earth had been told. Old enemies sat in the same room, arguing not about borders or politics, but about how to respond to a cry for help from beings they had never met. Some said they should stay out of it. Earth was far from the fighting. The swarm might never reach them. Why risk human lives for strangers? But others disagreed. Admiral William Harper was 63 years old. He had gray hair, a lined face, and hands that had seen too many wars. He had spent his whole life in the military, rising through the ranks during conflicts he wished had never happened. Now he stood before the assembled leaders and spoke. I have read this message many times, he said. These beings, these aliens, they are afraid. They are dying. They have tried everything they can think of and nothing has worked. So they reached out to us, the species they consider primitive and backwards. They swallowed their pride and asked for help. He looked around the room. I do not know if we can save them. I do not know if we are strong enough or smart enough to stop this swarm. But I know one thing for certain: we have to try, because that is who we are. When someone calls for help, we answer. The room was quiet for a long moment. Then, one by one, the leaders nodded. The response sent back to the Galactic Council was short, just 3 words. We are coming. High Counselor Rand did not expect an answer. He had agreed to send the message to Earth because there was nothing left to lose, not because he thought it would work. The humans were young, weak, and far away. Even if they wanted to help, what could they possibly do? So when the reply came, he assumed it was a polite refusal. Perhaps they would express sympathy, offer thoughts and prayers, and wish the conquered good luck. That was what most species did when faced with problems that were not their own. But then the sensor stations began sending alerts. High Counselor, said the communications officer, her voice trembling with confusion. We are detecting ships entering conquered space. Many ships. Rand looked up from his desk. Orion. No, sir, the signatures are human. He rushed to the command center, where Fleet Admiral Ara was already studying the data. Her scales had turned a pale shade of green, which happened when she was shocked or afraid. This cannot be right, she muttered. These numbers cannot be right. Rand looked at the display. At first, he could not understand what he was seeing. The screen showed thousands of dots moving through space in a massive formation. Each dot represented a ship. How many? He asked. Ara swallowed hard. 47 capital ships, over 200 support vessels, and approximately 400,000 transport craft. The room went silent. 400,000 transports. That meant millions of humans were on their way. Millions. That is impossible, someone said. They do not have the logistics capability for such a movement. They should not have enough ships. They built them, Ara replied quietly. Our intelligence reports say they have been building ships constantly for the past 30 days. Every factory on their planet has been working without stopping. They converted civilian vessels, pulled old ships out of retirement, even built new ones from raw materials. Rand felt dizzy. 30 days. In 30 days, the humans had assembled an armada larger than anything the Conquered had ever seen. The Concord's combined fleet numbered only 12,000 vessels, and most of those were damaged or running with reduced crews. Why would they do this? He wondered aloud. They do not know us. We are strangers to them. Why would they sacrifice so much for strangers? Nobody had an answer. When the human fleet arrived at Prime, it filled the space around the planet like a cloud of metal. Rand watched from his office window as ship after ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They were not elegant like Conquered vessels. They were boxy, practical, covered in visible weld marks and exposed pipes. Some of them looked like they had been put together in a hurry, which they probably had. But there were so many of them. Rand requested a meeting with the human commander. He expected to wait several days while proper diplomatic protocols were arranged. Instead, he received a response within minutes. Come aboard whenever you are ready. He took a small shuttle to the human flagship. It was called the Endurance, a name he found strangely fitting. The ship was large but not beautiful. The corridors were narrow and crowded with equipment. The lighting was harsh, and the air smelled of metal and sweat. Admiral William Harper met him at the docking bay. He was shorter than Rand expected, with gray hair and deep lines on his face. His uniform was neat but simple, without the elaborate decorations that Conquered officers wore. He extended his hand in a gesture that Rand had learned was called a handshake. "Welcome aboard," Harper said. His voice was calm and steady. "I apologize for the mess. We did not have time to make things pretty." Rand took the offered hand, finding the grip firm but not aggressive. "Admiral Harper, I must confess, I did not expect you to come. When we sent our message, we thought—" He trailed off, unsure how to continue. "You thought we would ignore it," Harper finished for him. "That we would hide on our little planet and hope the problem went away." "Yes," Rand admitted. Harper nodded slowly. "I understand. We are not well known in this galaxy. You have no reason to expect anything from us." He turned and began walking down the corridor, gesturing for Rand to follow. "But here is something you should know about humans. When someone asks for help, really asks, we have a hard time saying no. It is a weakness maybe, but it is also who we are." They entered the bridge, a large room filled with screens and control panels. Dozens of humans were working at various stations, talking rapidly into headsets, typing on keyboards, checking data. The energy in the room was intense, almost frantic. "Show me what we are dealing with," Harper said. Rand activated a portable holographic projector. The image of the Orion swarm appeared, a dark mass spreading across the star map like a stain. World after world blinked red as the swarm consumed them. "They number in the trillions," Rand explained. "Each individual creature is small, but they attack in waves so dense that our shields fail within minutes. They eat all organic matter. We have tried every weapon we have. We can slow them, but we cannot stop them." Harper studied the image without speaking. His face showed no fear, no panic. If anything, he looked thoughtful, like a man examining a difficult puzzle. "Your weapons are designed for precision," he said finally. "Surgical strikes, minimal collateral damage, am I correct?" Rand tilted his head. "Of course. Wasteful destruction is inefficient and morally wrong. We target only what needs to be destroyed." "That is your problem," Harper said. "You are trying to kill them one at a time, like using a needle against an ocean." He turned to one of his officers, a young man with dark skin and tired eyes. "Get me Colonel Danny Price. Tell her to start unpacking everything we brought." "Everything, sir?" the officer asked. "Everything." Rand felt a chill run through his body. There was something in Harper's voice, something cold and determined that made him suddenly afraid. Not afraid of the swarm, afraid of the humans. "Admiral," he said carefully, "what exactly did you bring?" Harper looked at him with eyes that had seen too much death and suffering. "High Counselor, your species has spent thousands of years learning how to build things. Beautiful things, advanced things, things that push the boundaries of science. My species has spent thousands of years learning how to destroy things. We have had a lot of practice." He turned back to the display showing the swarm. "You asked for our help. Now you are going to see what humans do when we go to war. I hope you are ready." Rand was not sure he was ready. He was not sure anyone could be ready for what was coming. But as he watched the humans move around the bridge with purpose and determination, he felt something he had not felt in a long time. Hoping. Over the next several days, Rand observed the humans closely. He wanted to understand them, to figure out how such a young species had managed to mobilize so quickly. What he discovered both amazed and disturbed him. The humans did not rest. Not in any meaningful way. They worked in shifts, one group sleeping while another worked, cycling through day and night without stopping. They ate their meals while walking, shouting conversations across crowded rooms, fixing problems with whatever tools they had available. When something broke, they did not wait for proper replacement parts. They improvised, using tape and wire and sheer stubbornness to keep things running. Rand watched a young human technician repair a broken power conduit using nothing but a piece of metal and some kind of sticky substance. When he asked how she knew the repair would hold, she shrugged and said, "It will hold long enough. That is all that matters." This attitude confused him. In the Concord, everything was done properly or not at all. There were procedures, protocols, regulations. Every action had to be approved by the correct authorities. Every repair had to meet exact specifications. The idea of doing something good enough was foreign to them. But the humans did not seem to care about perfect. They cared about fast. Colonel Danny Price was in charge of what the humans called their logistics division. She was a short woman with brown hair cut very close to her head and a constant smile that did not match the deadly cargo she oversaw. Rand found her in one of the massive cargo bays, supervising the unloading of thousands of crates from the transport ships. "What is in these containers?" he asked. Price looked up from her. "Weapons, mostly, everything we could grab, missiles, bombs, mines, torpedoes. Some of them are old, pulled out of storage from the last century. Some of them are brand new, barely tested." She patted one of the crates affectionately. "And some of them are special." "Special how?" Price's smile widened. "Nuclear warheads, antimatter charges, thermobaric explosives. A few experimental things that our scientists have been working on. They were not sure if they would ever be allowed to use them, so they were very excited when we asked." Rand felt his heart skip a beat. "You still use nuclear weapons?" "We never stopped," Price said. "Some people thought we would give them up after we achieved peace on Earth, but we kept making them, kept improving them, just in case." She gestured at the rows of crates stretching into the distance. "Good thing we did, right?" "That is," Rand struggled to find the right word, "that is barbaric." Price considered this. "Maybe, probably actually. Humans are not nice, High Counselor, we never have been. We spent most of our history killing each other over land, over resources, over ideas. We got very good at it." She looked him directly in the eyes. "But right now that is exactly what you need. You do not need nice. You need effective." Rand did not know how to respond to that. Meanwhile, Admiral Harper had called a war council. Representatives from the conquered fleet were invited to attend, including Fleet Admiral Ara. She arrived with her senior officers, all of them wearing expressions of cautious skepticism. The meeting room was cramped by Concord standards, with uncomfortable chairs and harsh lighting. Harper stood at the front, next to a simple two-dimensional screen that displayed a map of the local star systems. "Here is the situation," Harper began. The swarm is coming this way, eating everything in its path. Your strategy so far has been defensive. You try to protect as many worlds as possible, spreading your forces thin. The swarm punches through wherever you are weakest and you retreat to the next line. Is that accurate? Ara nodded stiffly. We must protect civilian populations. It is our duty. I understand, Harper said, but you cannot protect everyone by being everywhere. You do not have enough ships and neither do we, so we need to change tactics. He pointed to a system on the map, a small yellow star surrounded by several planets. System, uninhabited. 3 gas giants, an asteroid belt, nothing of value. We are going to make the swarm come there. We are going to concentrate their entire force in one location, and then we are going to destroy them all at once. One of Ara's officers spoke up. How do you propose to lure them? The Iran follow organic matter. They will not go to an empty system. We will make it look full, Harper replied. We will build a beacon that broadcasts signals mimicking a planet covered with life. The swarm will not be able to resist. They will think it is the biggest meal they have ever seen. Ara leaned forward. And when they arrive at this trap, what then? You cannot fight trillions of creatures with conventional weapons. Harper smiled, but there was no humor in it. Who said anything about conventional? He pressed a button, and the screen changed to show technical diagrams of various weapons. Rand recognized some of them from the cargo bays. Others were completely foreign to him. The system has 3 gas giants, Harper explained. We are going to fill them with antimatter charges. When the swarm is in position, we detonate the charges. The gas giants explode. The shockwave destroys everything within 1 billion kilometers. The room went absolutely silent. You want to destroy 3 planets, Ara said slowly. They are gas giants, Harper replied. No solid surface, no life, just fuel for the biggest bomb in galactic history. The energy released would be. Ara trailed off, unable to finish the calculation. Enough, Harper said. Enough to kill every single creature in that swarm. Enough to end this war in one blow. Rand found his voice. Admiral, the destruction you are describing is beyond anything we have ever considered. The environmental damage alone would affect systems light years away. Yes, Harper agreed. It will, and I wish there was another way, but there is not. Your weapons are designed to minimize damage, to preserve life wherever possible. Our weapons are designed to destroy. That is the difference between us. He looked around the room at the stunned alien faces. You asked for our help. This is what human help looks like. We do not do things halfway. Ara stood up slowly. Her scales had turned a shade of gray that Rand had never seen before. If we agree to this plan, we will be responsible for destruction on a scale that has never been attempted. History will judge us. Harper nodded. History always judges. The question is whether there will be anyone left to write that history. Right now, the swarm is winning. Your colonies are dying. Your people are being eaten alive. We can stop that, but only if you let us do what we do best. The silence stretched on. Finally, Ara spoke. What do you need from us? Harper's expression did not change, but something in his eyes softened. Just stay out of the way, and maybe say a prayer if your species does that sort of thing. Rand watched as the conquered officers filed out of the room, their faces pale with shock. He remained behind, approaching Harper as the Admiral gathered his notes. You planned this from the beginning, Rand said quietly. Before you even left Earth, you knew what you were going to do. Harper looked at him for a long moment. Yes, we knew. The swarm is too big to fight fairly. The only option is to cheat, to hit them so hard, so fast that they do not have time to adapt. He paused. I am sorry if that scares you. It terrifies me, Rand admitted, but not as much as the alternative. Harper nodded slowly. Good, hold on to that feeling. It will help you understand what comes next. Rand was not sure he wanted to understand, but he knew that he had no choice. The humans were going to war, and the galaxy would never be the same. The preparation took 12 days. 12 days of constant work, of ships moving back and forth between the staging area and the system, of engineers and soldiers working until they collapsed from exhaustion. Human demolition teams landed on every asteroid in the belt, planting charges in precise locations calculated by the fleet's computers. They worked in heavy suits under the harsh glare of the yellow star, drilling into rock and ice, seeding the system with enough explosives to crack a moon. Other teams focused on the gas giants. Small probes carried antimatter containers deep into the swirling clouds, positioning them at specific depths where the pressure would magnify the explosions. Each container was wrapped in layers of shielding to prevent accidental detonation. One mistake, one wrong move, and the entire operation would end in disaster. But there were no mistakes. The humans moved with a precision that surprised even Ran. For all their apparent chaos, they knew what they were doing when it mattered. The beacon was built on the largest asteroid in the belt. It was an ugly thing, a collection of transmitters and power generators bolted together without any thought for appearance. But it worked. When activated, it sent out signals that mimicked a planet teeming with life. To the Oran's simple senses, it would look like the greatest feast in the history of their species. "The trap is set," Colonel Price reported to Admiral Harper. "All charges are in position. Beacon is ready to activate on your command." Harper nodded slowly. He stood on the bridge of the Endurance, looking out at the vast darkness of space. Somewhere out there, the swarm was coming. Trillions of hungry creatures, driven by nothing but the instinct to consume. "How long until they arrive?" he asked. "Sensor stations report the swarm has changed course," the tactical officer replied. "They detected the beacon 3 hours ago. Current estimates put them in the system within 48 hours. "Faster than we expected," Harper said quietly. "They are hungry, sir." Harper almost smiled. "Let us hope they stay hungry until they reach the kill zone." The human fleet positioned itself at the edge of the system, far enough away to avoid the initial blast but close enough to engage any survivors. The conquered ships held back even further, their crews watching with a mixture of fear and fascination. Ran had requested permission to remain on the Endurance. He wanted to see this with his own eyes, to witness what humans were capable of. Part of him hoped he was wrong about them, that their plan would fail and they would have to find another way, a cleaner way. But another part of him, a part he did not like to acknowledge, hoped they would succeed. Because if they failed, there would be no second chance. The swarm arrived ahead of schedule. They came out of faster-than-light travel like a dark wave rolling across the stars. The sensors struggled to count them all. The numbers kept climbing, passing 1 trillion, then 2, then 5. By the time they finished counting, the estimate stood at over 8 trillion individual creatures. 8 trillion. The number was meaningless. It was too large to comprehend. All Rand knew was that the space around the system had turned black with bodies, a living cloud that blocked out the light of the stars. "They are heading for the beacon," the tactical officer reported, his voice tight with tension. "They are spreading out to minimize losses, just like they did in previous engagements." Harper watched the display without blinking. "That is what we want. Let them spread out. Let them fill the system." The swarm poured into the asteroid belt, billions of creatures swarming toward the beacon. They began attacking the asteroids themselves, tearing into the rock in search of organic matter that was not there. Confusion rippled through the hive mind as they found nothing to eat. But they kept coming, more and more, filling every corner of the system, drawn by the promise of food that did not exist. "First wave is past the outer markers," Price reported. "Second wave entering the belt. Third wave approaching the gas giants." Harper waited. "Fourth wave is fully committed. Fifth wave." "Now," Harper said. Price pressed a button on her console. Across the system, timers began counting down. The first explosions came from the asteroid belt. Nuclear warheads detonated in sequence, creating a ring of fire that cut the swarm in half. Millions of creatures were vaporized instantly, their bodies turned to ash in the blink of an eye. But that was just the beginning. The antimatter charges in the gas giants ignited. The effect was impossible to describe. The first giant erupted like a new sun being born, a sphere of pure white light that expanded outward at incredible speed. The second giant followed a fraction of a second later, then the third. The shockwaves collided in the middle of the system, right where the bulk of the swarm had gathered. The forces released were beyond anything Ran had ever witnessed, beyond anything any conquered species had ever witnessed. The display went white as the sensors overloaded. For long seconds, there was nothing but light. When the sensors recovered, Ran looked at the screen and felt his heart stop. The system was gone, not damaged, not changed, gone. Where three gas giants had orbited a yellow star, there was now only debris and radiation. The asteroid belt had been pulverized into dust. The swarm. The swarm was gone. 8 trillion creatures, the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known, reduced to nothing in an instant. Confirmed kills, the tactical officer said, his voice shaking. Sensors detect no remaining Iran life signs in the system, 0 survivors. The bridge was silent. Humans and aliens alike stared at the display, struggling to process what they had just seen. Rand turned to Harper. The Admiral's face was pale, his hands gripping the railing in front of him. He did not look triumphant. He looked tired, old. "You did it," Rand whispered. Harper shook his head slowly. "We destroyed them. There is a difference." From across the communication network, voices began to emerge. Conquered officers, colonial administrators, ordinary citizens who had been watching the battle from sensor feeds. At first, the voices were confused, uncertain. Then, gradually, the tone changed. Cheering, crying, prayers of thanks in 100 different languages. Ara's voice came through the command channel. "Admiral Harper, I do not know what to say. You have saved us all." Harper took a deep breath. "We did what we came to do, Fleet Admiral. Nothing more, nothing less. The Council will want to honor you, all of you. This victory will be remembered for eternity." Harper was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was soft. "The Council should think carefully about that. What we did today, it was necessary, but it was also terrible. We destroyed an entire star system. We wiped out an entire species." He looked at his hands as if seeing them for the first time. "That is not something to celebrate. It is something to remember, so that we never have to do it again." Ran understood then. The humans had not come to prove their strength. They had not come for glory or recognition. They had come because someone had asked for help, and helping was what they did. But helping for humans sometimes meant doing terrible things, things that left scars on the soul. He looked at Harper with new eyes, not as a primitive barbarian, but as a being who carried a heavy burden. A being who had seen the worst of his own nature and used it anyway, because the alternative was worse. Admiral Rand said quietly, "Thank you." Harper looked at him. For just a moment, something like gratitude flickered in his eyes. "You are welcome, High Counselor. Now let us go home." The journey back to Prime was quiet. The human fleet moved through space in formation, their boxy ships looking somehow smaller than they had before. The crews were exhausted, running on nothing but caffeine and willpower. Many of them had not slept properly in weeks. Rand remained on the Endurance at Admiral Harper's invitation. He spent most of the journey watching the humans, trying to understand them better. What he saw surprised him. They were not celebrating. There were no victory parties, no songs of triumph, no boasting about what they had accomplished. Instead, the humans were quiet, subdued. They spoke in low voices, checked on each other, made sure their friends were eating and resting. Some of them prayed. Others simply sat in silence, staring at nothing. He found Colonel Price in one of the observation rooms, looking out at the stars. Her usual smile was gone, replaced by something harder, more tired. "You won," Rand said, sitting down beside her. "The swarm is destroyed. The galaxy is safe. Why does everyone look so sad?" Price did not answer immediately. She kept staring at the stars, her reflection ghostly in the transparent wall. "When I was young," she finally said, "my grandmother told me a story. She was in a war a long time ago back on Earth. Her country won that war. The enemy surrendered and everyone went home, but my grandmother never celebrated. When I asked her why, she said that there is nothing to celebrate about killing, even when you have to do it, even when the people you killed were bad people who did bad things." She turned to look at Rand. "We did not enjoy what happened back there. We are glad the threat is gone, yes. We are relieved that no more of your people will die, but we just killed trillions of living creatures. They were hungry, mindless things, but they were still alive, and we turned them to ash." Rand considered this. The Oran would have consumed everything. They showed no mercy to the worlds they attacked. "I know," Price said. "That is why we did what we did. But understanding why does not make it feel good. It just makes it feel necessary." The fleet arrived at Prime 3 days later. The reception was unlike anything Rand had ever seen. Every ship in the conquered fleet had gathered in orbit around the planet. Civilian vessels joined them, carrying spectators from dozens of worlds. As the human ships approached, the gathered fleet began broadcasting a signal on all channels. It was a simple sound, a rising tone that repeated over and over. "What is that?" Harper asked, standing on his bridge. "The signal of highest honor," Rand explained. "It has not been used in over 1,000 years. It is reserved for those who perform acts of extraordinary courage, acts that save entire civilizations." Harper watched the gathered ships for a long moment. His expression was difficult to read. "We do not deserve that," he said quietly. "That is not for you to decide," Rand replied. The council assembly was called the next day. The great hall was filled beyond capacity, with delegates from every member species and observers from 100 more. They had come from across the galaxy to witness this moment, to see the humans who had saved them all. Admiral Harper entered the chamber with a small group of officers, including Colonel Price and Lieutenant, who had first received the distress call back on Earth. They walked down the central aisle, past rows of alien faces, some humanoid and some completely foreign. Rand waited for them at the podium. He had prepared a speech, but looking at the tired humans standing before him, he decided to throw it away. "Admiral Harper," he began, "when we sent our message to Earth, we did not expect a response. Your species was unknown to us. What little we knew suggested you were primitive, violent, and self-destructive. We thought you were not capable of helping us." He paused, letting the silence build. "We were wrong." A murmur rippled through the assembly. "In our darkest hour, when all hope seemed lost, you came. You brought your ships, your soldiers, your weapons. You traveled across the galaxy to fight an enemy that was not yours, to save people you had never met. And when the moment came, you did not hesitate." He extended all 4 of his arms in the traditional gesture of profound respect. "You showed us something we did not expect, something we did not understand. Humans are not just violent. You are not just dangerous. You are also brave. You are loyal. You are willing to sacrifice everything for those who need you." Harper stepped forward. He looked uncomfortable with the attention, like a man who would rather be anywhere else. "High Counselor, I appreciate your words, but I want to be honest with you and with everyone in this room." The chamber fell silent. "Humans are not heroes. We are not saints. We have done terrible things in our history. We have fought wars over nothing. We have killed each other for the reasons imaginable. We have weapons capable of destroying our own planet many times over, and we built them on purpose." He looked around at the assembled delegates. "But we also have something else. Call it stubbornness, call it pride, call it whatever you want. When someone is in trouble, when someone needs help, we cannot look away. It is not in our nature. We have to try, even when the odds are bad, even when we might fail, even when trying means doing things we will regret for the rest of our lives." He straightened his shoulders. "You asked for help. That was enough for us. It will always be enough for us." Counselor, the ancient one who had first suggested contacting Earth, rose slowly from her seat. Her voice was thin with age, but it carried across the silent chamber. "Admiral Harper, when I proposed reaching out to humanity, I did not know what to expect. I only knew that desperate times require desperate measures, but you have shown me something I did not anticipate." She moved toward him, her step slow but steady. "You have shown me that true strength is not in weapons or technology. It is in the heart. It is in the willingness to stand up when others fall down. It is in the courage to do terrible things so that others do not have to." She reached him and looked up into his eyes. "We called you primitive. We called you backwards. We were fools. You are not primitive. You are simply different. And that difference may be exactly what this galaxy needs." Harper met her gaze. For a moment, something passed between them, something that did not need words. "We just did what anyone would do," he said finally. Shook her head slowly. "No, Admiral, that is what makes you special. Anyone would have stayed home. Anyone would have protected themselves, but you came. You always come. That is the human way." The assembly erupted in applause. Delegates rose from their seats, adding their voices to the noise. The sound echoed through the great hall, washing over the human delegation like a wave. Harper stood in the center of it all, looking uncomfortable but also strangely proud. Beside him, Colonel Price wiped something from her eye. Lieutenant smiled for the first time in weeks. Rand watched them from the podium, and he understood something important. The galaxy had changed today. Not because of the battle, not because of the weapons or the explosions or the destruction. It had changed because of the humans themselves. They had shown the conquered that there was more to strength than power. That courage meant nothing without compassion. That the best warriors were the ones who fought not for glory, but for others. And somewhere out there on hundreds of worlds, beings of all shapes and sizes looked up at the sky. They knew that the swarm was gone. They knew that they were safe. But more than that, they knew that somewhere among the stars the humans were watching, standing ready, waiting for the next call for help. Because that was what humans did. They answered. Always.